Welcome to Views from the World Tree. On today's episode, we take a look behind the curtain and discuss how to protect yourselves from the things that go bump in the night. And now, on with the show. I guess I will start off with our personal news. This week has been difficult for me between work and everything that's been going on in my personal life. But I did create a new project, so to speak, to kind of find some normalcy in my life. So I have been working on developing a new role-playing game. It's definitely in the early stages. But the basic premise is the use of modern-ish technology and incorporating it into a Dungeons and Dragons type D20 system. So I imagine using pistols and rifles and that type of thing instead of your classic bows and arrows and melee swords and all of that, and kind of making a modern spin on it. So I've been developing the base rules for this. I've been looking at kind of programming them into a video game form too. So right now it's definitely a passion project, but it's been kind of fun to do a little bit of coding, a little bit of writing, a little bit of dreaming, and just kind of creating this game. Basic premise takes place during the turn of the century in the western United States, kind of cowboys, Indians, technology versus like anti-technology and that type of thing. So it's been fun to look at, a lot of fun to develop. And then I've also officially made it a month for studying Spanish with trying to complete at least one lesson on DuoLingo every day. And recently unlocked the second tier of words and vocabulary from DuoLingo, which I think is kind of an accomplishment. But, well, that's my news. Nothing too exciting.
Yeah, I think you're selling yourself a little bit short on the DuoLingo thing. I think that is an accomplishment. Learning languages is something that's not easy, and keeping consistent at it is even more difficult. So good job. Also, I'm super excited to see where your RPG project goes. Sounds intriguing.
Once I sorry, I didn't mean to cut you in. Once I get a playable demo, I'll have you be one of our playtesters. Maybe we'll do it on a stream or on our YouTube channel or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That would be fun. One of the characters on the first season of Critical Role that I really liked was Percy, who was, I don't remember what they called his class, but I know he used like guns and kind of like an early artificer almost. But
yeah, didn't Taliesin and why can't I think of the host?
Matthew Mercer?
Yeah, thank you. The big one, the big name. I know that they worked on porting that from Pathfinder over to the D&D system, so I can't remember what it was called, but it was a really interesting character.
Yeah, Matthew Mercer's a really cool guy. He's come up with a lot of really interesting supplements. They had that, and then the Blood Hunter was the other class that he came up with that's in D&D Beyond. Anyway, not to go off on too much of a tangent, but
no, that's all right. I mean, I kind of opened the door with saying, "Hey, I've been developing a tabletop RPG." So
yeah, I think it's because my wife and I are feeling I don't know what the word is. We, like I have said earlier, we just moved out of state by quite a bit, like 8 hours out of state, and lost a lot of our board gaming buddies. So kind of trying to fill a hole in our lives and find some new people to play with. So that's probably why it's on my mind. But anyway, so personal news for me. Your studying Spanish in Duolingo kind of inspired me to try and come up with a hobby that actually is going to better myself instead of just entertain me. So I decided to start learning Norwegian. Spanish would be the obvious choice as far as usability where I live, but I already speak Spanish pretty well and Portuguese. So I decided to take a look at my ancestry and go for the Norwegian. And I think I'm on day 8 or 9, something like that, of my streak. And my official assessment so far is that Norwegian grammar is confusing. Maybe it's just the way that Duolingo is, teaches you the basics, and then they like say, okay, well, actually, if you want to speak how people sound in real life, you need to say it this way instead. So, but
Norwegian is interesting. I know enough that I might be able to get around, at least in Oslo, since each fjord has a different dialect. I mean, in all honesty, but I think coming from the Latin based languages like Portuguese and Spanish, which has a very interesting sentence structure, Norwegian is more closely related to English, which has one of the wonkiest sentence structures in modern language. So just think of it like English and it'll be a little bit easier for you. That's my advice.
Wonky is a good way of putting it. It's
yeah.
I do like that the conjugations and the pronouns seem to be a lot simpler, because in Portuguese, well, in Brazilian Portuguese, which is what I know how to speak, and then even more so in Spanish, there's like multiple different pronouns that you use depending on the situation, and your verb conjugation is incredibly strict. And one thing I've noticed about Norwegian is really you use the same conjugation and it can mean multiple things, which is great because that's how English is. And it's, I don't know, it seems like it's more a matter of learning the, like you said, the dialect that's used in certain areas. So
yeah. I'm happy that you're learning it.
Jeg er glad, or jeg er glad. I think that's how you say that.
Jeg er glad.
Anyway.
Jeg er glad du snakker norsk.
Yes, I see. Good news, everyone!
I know in the past episodes, the climate science has kind of been your thing, so not to steal your thunder, but...
Oh, you stole it, but I'll let you on this one because it's fascinating.
So I came across a story of a new to the U.S. Apparently it's been around for a while overseas, especially in kind of Southeast Asia, but it's a trend called agrivoltaics. It's also sometimes called agrophotovoltaics, abbreviated as APV, but most of the things that I found called it agrivoltaics. It's a new trend of basically you have a plot of land and you co-develop it for both solar energy production as well as either farming or raising small livestock like chickens underneath the canopy of solar panels. And it was really interesting to me because as an engineer in the semiconductor industry working on automation, I'm like, that's what I do, is try and optimize things and find ways to synergize different processes. And the articles that I was reading all had really great things to say about this. It's considered a win-win-win or a triple win situation because it hits three main pillars. It increases food production, it obviously boosts the production of renewable energy through the solar panels, and it saves a significant amount of water, like a big amount of water. So the way that it works is you place these solar panels on like a grid that's about 10 feet above the ground, and you leave enough spacing between rows so that you can still get farming equipment in there for harvesting and spraying for pests and whatever else they do. And that has the side effect of providing an optimal mix of sun and shade for the plants. And obviously there's, specific plants that this works with and some that don't. Lettuce, I think, was one they called out with that needs like full sun all day. But really, there was only a few common crops that this wouldn't work with. And as the earth rotates, sorry to any flat earthers in the audience, but as the earth rotates, the shade pattern moves, the shade from the solar panels. So all of the sections of the growing area all get a mix of direct sun and indirect sun. And what that does is it makes it so that the crops require a lot less water and yield better than if they were in full sun all day. And this is something that you, with a biology background, are probably aware of, but I didn't realize that as far as plant growth, there's actually a point of diminishing returns with sunlight and growing plants. Plants can only use a certain amount of sun, and any extra after that point just increases the need for water. It doesn't actually increase, it doesn't produce additional photosynthesis or do anything. The plants just need more water so that they don't scorch. And that kind of that rotating pattern of shade and indirect sun really helps with that. Another benefit is that the air underneath the panels is more regulated, so it stays cooler in the summer and warmer in the spring and the fall. And there was a study that was done that showed that converting just 1% of American farmland to agrivoltaics would actually be enough to meet the United States' current renewable energy targets, which is crazy to me. And that's, to clarify, that's not saying that the U.S. would be totally carbon neutral. That's just, our current administration has set targets for renewable energy and carbon neutrality, and just 1% of farmland converted to this system would meet that. So, and then another fringe benefit that I guess is worth calling out. A lot of farmers, the reason that they're on board with this is that depending on the area, the state that they live in, they're able to use the solar as a secondary source of income. So I know in Utah, where I just left, and I think where I live now, I'm not sure, but in most states, if you have a solar system that's connected to the grid, you can actually receive credit for pushing the electricity that you produce into the grid. So, and the study mentioned that was kind of a key thing for farmers actually adopting this practice was, while it did increase crop yields, it does obviously mean that you have less space that you can plant crops because you need room for the solar infrastructure. And so as long as they're able to offset that with the revenues from the energy production, these farmers are totally on board. So I don't know. You're the climate nerd. What do you think? The way of the future?
I think it's awesome. Honestly, I had never heard of this. And then to hear in the show notes, you'll see that there's a farm that you can go tour pretty close to where I live in Colorado that I kind of want to go tour just to see how it goes. Also, as I was listening to you talk about it, I was going, how can you get these farmers that are growing corn for ethanol, for gasoline production in? And then I realized some companies are trying to go completely electric cars by like 2030 or something. So farmers would have no problem giving up some of their corn fields for production of this type to grow a different type of crop. I think it's a win-win-win.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, this is a bit of a tangent, but I don't really buy into the whole ethanol thing. My truck, I have a Ford F-150 that can actually run on ethanol. It's a flex fuel vehicle, so it can run on up to E85, which is 85% ethanol. And I don't run it in my truck. It's not that much cheaper. The emissions are really not that different. It gets fewer miles per gallon, and the wear and tear on the engine components, even though since it's a flex fuel vehicle, it was designed to handle that. I mean, it's just not worth it, in my opinion. So I think electric vehicles are definitely the way of the future, but I think ethanol fuel was kind of a, and not to put on my tinfoil hat, but I think it was a way for the automakers to appease the EPA, honestly. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned my Ford that I have that's a flex fuel vehicle. My other vehicle that I drive, usually in the fall and winter because it doesn't have air conditioning, but it's an 89 Toyota Hilux, and it does not like gasoline that has ethanol in it. I mean, it's an old 4-cylinder engine. It's super reliable and bulletproof, but it was designed for a time when gasoline meant gasoline, octane, hydrocarbons, and that's it. So
yeah. One of my favorite shows is the Long Way Up, Long Way Down, Long Way Round series with Ewan McGregor, where they jump on motorcycles and they just go and have like a guy's trip. In the last one, they actually had a truck that was electric, and their bikes were electric. They went from Argentina to California.
Yeah, I had a Ford Fusion that was a hybrid, so obviously not quite the same as a plug-in electric, but this was also, like 5 or 6 years ago, and I loved that car. Like in the city, when you were driving slow enough to stay on the electric motor, I would sometimes get 50 to 55 miles a gallon. I absolutely loved that car. And then one day I was stopped at a stop sign, and a lady in a big SUV rear-ended me and totaled it. So I still am pretty bummed about that sometimes. But
that's fair. We've got a hybrid right now. We've got a Toyota Highlander, which is a hybrid engine in it, and I mean, it's a V8, so it's not that great gas mileage wise, but with the hybrid, we're getting about 32 miles to the gallon, so about the same as a commuter car for a big SUV.
Nice.
And I kind of like that.
That's one of the things that I love about my little Toyota truck is, that little 4-cylinder, man. That truck might have 210,000 miles, but it'll get between 25 and 30 miles per gallon all day long.
Mm-hmm.
So, and part of that's because it's a 5-speed manual, but
you do get to control RPMs a little bit more and fuel consumption that way when you actually control the shift.
For the younger listeners in our audience, a manual is when you have this like stick that comes out from the floor, and you have to you have 3 pedals. No, sorry.
It's
stirring the pot a little bit.
It's also known as the millennial anti-theft device.
I've seen that. I almost bought a sticker to put on my window that said that. But I try not to, stir things up too much.
It's all right. For those of you that don't know, we are both millennials, so we're ripping on ourselves and we're not like being generational like jerks to anybody.
True. Yep.
So
anyway, I kind of took a lot of the time there. Sorry. Why don't we
no worries.
Go ahead and move forward.
Yeah, mine's pretty quick because I don't have the links and I didn't research it as deeply as you did, which is fine because the what was it?
Agrivoltaics.
Agrivoltaics was really fascinating, and I'm actually looking forward to reading more about that. But one of my routines every morning is I log on to 5 or 6 different websites that kind of do an overview of scientific journals and stuff. It just kind of makes me think outside the box and stay up to date on what science is doing. But today I was reading about the African elephants and how through natural selection to combat poachers, basically, that they're seeing reduced tusk sizes and in some cases entire herds that are tusk free except for the men. So the scientists are basically believing that because of ivory poaching and the constant civil wars and revolutionary wars that are going on over in Africa, that the poachers have kind of had free reign and they're going and harvesting these tusks. And so at one point, the article was saying that an elephant that doesn't have ivory tusks lives 5 times longer than one that does. And so they're seeing this natural selection where elephants are mating to reduce tusk size. And one of the most interesting things that they found was that the tusks are linked to the X chromosome, which is the chromosome that the females have. So they have 2 X's. Males have an X and Y. For those of you that either have not gotten to high school biology or may have forgotten it, but they're finding that the men are retaining their tusks, but females with the 2 X's are actually the ones that are losing it. So it goes completely against Mendelian genetics, which says that this shouldn't happen. And so I don't know. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. Again, not having a biology background, I do remember Gregor Mendel and the pea plants. But yeah, I guess it would make sense though if these elephants without tusks live longer because they're not as sought after by the poachers, they would reproduce more often, and then the offspring would be more likely to have those genes. I don't know. It is interesting.
Yeah.
I also, this is my ignorance showing, but I didn't realize that ivory was still such a big thing. I know it was used in piano keys. For some reason, I thought that it wasn't used anymore. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. Yeah, I guess I just didn't realize there was still such a market for it. That's kind of crazy.
I don't know. I mean, I hate to blame everything on the Asian markets, but they're talking about the rhinos having their horns cut off, like poached for their horns, as an aphrodisiac or a
like an Eastern medicine type ingredient.
I don't know that they're using ivory for that, but I mean, they're still whaling sperm whales for their ivory. They're still making like chess sets and intricate carvings out of ivory. I just think it's a beautiful piece of material to work with. It maybe a status symbol. I don't know.
With the veil between life and death reaching its thinnest point during the month leading up to Halloween, at least according to Celtic mythology, we wanted to share some of the spooky monsters of the season and how to protect yourself from impending doom if you were to stumble across them. This week will be a fun look at some of the dangers of the season.
I'm excited for this one. But my excitement aside, we'll start with witches. So A witch, in the stereotypical sense, is a practicer of witchcraft or magic. They're usually female. The most common definition of witchcraft is a supernatural means used to bring harm to others. Also, they use voodoo, hoodoo, satyr, and other forms of magic. And almost all cultures have such stories of witches or their counterparts. So, what can a witch do? They can alter their appearance to seem beautiful. Think Disney Wicked Witch posing as a gorgeous female or whatnot in order to trick the unsuspecting target. They can cast spells, and they typically dwell in dark, twisted woods, moors, or in gloomy swamps. So, how do we protect ourselves from them? We avoid them. Always. In case they cast the wicked eye at you. No. According to legend, witches tend to have a superiority complex and will actually strike bargains with mortals if they show her subservience and respect. Some of these bargains can actually be mutually beneficial, but with a witch, it will likely turn in the tables when possible. Typically, witches are killed by burning them alive, though Harry Potter makes it clear that burning a witch actually has a pleasant tickling feeling, and the witches would just disapparaate when the flames appear to engulf them. So, yeah. Basically, protect yourself by not making any deals with anybody that seems too good to be true.
Fair enough. Probably great advice for the next classic Halloween monster we have on the list, which are demons. So, what is a demon? Demons are the embodiment of chaos and evil. They are engines of destruction, barely contained in monstrous forms. Demons have no compassion, empathy, or mercy. They exist only to destroy. Some abilities and traits of demons. Plants wither and die wherever demons tread. The more a demon kills, the stronger it becomes. Demons are able to possess mortal humans and other creatures. And warlocks and some dark sorcerers are able to summon and bind demons to their will. However, this often ends poorly for them when they inevitably lose control and the demon turns on them. So, how to protect yourself should you encounter a demon? Well, if you're a fan of the Netflix series Supernatural, you could always get a demon trap tattoo. Or you could carry some holy water with you. Holy water burns lesser demons who are currently possessing a mortal body. One thing to note, however, demons cannot be slain in our world. If you are able to kill a demon in this world, they dissolve into ichor and immediately reform in their own realm with their mind and memories intact. And they will not rest until they make their way back to our world to exact revenge on the mortal who dispatched it. The only way, therefore, to permanently kill a demon is to somehow travel to their realm and kill them there. Should you decide to attempt that, good luck.
Yeah, I think I'll stay here. I'm not sure about going to the depths of hell to kill something that has more power there.
You'd
right?
have to have a serious vendetta.
Yeah. Our next monster, a little bit easier to kill, but we'll get into that, is the classic vampire. So, what are vampires? They're awakened to an endless night. The vampires hunger for the life that they've lost and sate their hunger by drinking the blood of the living. Vampires have no emotion, so they fixate on physical symbols of what they crave: art, books, trophies, etc. Some of the stereotypical traits: they don't have reflection or shadows. The feelings they held in life, they get twisted in their undeath, love turns into unhealthy obsessions, friendships become bitter jealousy, things like that. They're super strong. They can fly. Some stories say they turn into bats. Some say they just fly without transforming. How do we protect ourselves from these blood-sucking beasts of the night? Vampires remain chained to their coffin, crypt, or grave, and they must rest there during the day. If they want to move that location, they must transport their coffin along with a significant amount of grave dirt from their original grave. They can be killed by garlic, stakes, holy water, sunlight, or beheading. Also, a vampire can't enter your own property unless you invite it in. So be careful who you invite into your house.
Okay, next on the list are werewolves. For the purpose of this list, we decided to include all lycanthropes. We'll get into that in a second. So, what is a werewolf, or what is a lycanthrope? One of the oldest and most feared curses, lycanthropy, can transform the most civilized human into a ravenous beast. In their natural human form, they appear as their normal self and may or may not be aware that they are cursed. They could be cursed by a powerful spellcaster, or the curse can spread from an infected bite or scratch inflicted by an already existing werewolf. It's worth noting that a lycanthrope is an overarching term for all were creatures. Most common are wolves, bears, and boars. Some of the abilities and traits of these creatures: in their wolf or other animal form, they resemble basically an extremely powerful version of that animal. However, they usually have glowing eyes and are unnaturally intelligent, thanks to their human half. Lycanthropes can be good or evil. Since they're part human, they retain some of the traits from when they were fully human. An evil lycanthrope will hide among populations of normal folk, emerging in their animal form at night to spread terror and bloodshed. However, the good ones tend to just be reclusive hermits that live alone, away from villages and towns where they're not able to harm others. A werewolf, or a werebear, wereboar, can choose to change at any time, but on the 2 to 3 nights of the lunar cycle, when the moon is full, they are typically not able to stop themselves from transforming into their wolfish alter ego. And the more they allow themselves to indulge in their bloodlust, the less control they retain. But with perseverance and work, many werewolves are able to lead semi-normal lives. So, should you encounter one of the evil types of these creatures, how do you protect yourself? Well, you can run, but you'll only die tired. So if you're prepared with either a silver bullet or a silver knife, you can use that to kill a werewolf. Or was the werewolf spawned due to an infected bite or scratch from another? If you kill the werewolf or creature that cursed them, that will break the curse on the one that you encounter.
Sorry, you'll only die tired got me. Run away. Just take me. All right, our next beast is going to be ghosts. So a ghost is a soul of a once living creature bound to haunt a specific location, another creature, or an object that held significance to it in life. Most believe that they had unfinished business. The ghost yearns to complete some unresolved task from its life. It might seek to avenge its own death, fulfill an oath, or any other things. It may not even realize that it's dead. Manifestations, profound feelings of melancholy and yearning emanate from haunted places. Strange sounds, where unnatural silences are common. Cold spots are a dead giveaway. Quite literally, a dead giveaway. Sorry. Puns aside. So how do you protect yourself from a ghost? You can help the ghost finish its unfinished business. Or again, if you follow Supernatural, the TV show, salt and burn the corpse's bones. Or if no bones can be found, burn the object they're haunting. If you're one of the Winchester brothers, a shotgun shell filled with rock salt is also a good way to at least keep them off you for a second.
Also works for living human trespassers.
Well, that's true. Oh man, can you imagine the salt in a wound? Ugh.
So continuing with the undead monsters, we have skeletons. So what is a skeleton? It's a form of reanimated human remains. This reanimation is usually performed by a necromancer. Skeleton that has been raised usually has limited ability to think and reason, but mostly they just follow simple orders. Some of the abilities and traits of a skeleton, they have increased strength. It seems that whatever sinister force awakens a skeleton also infuses its bones with a dark vitality, adhering joints together and reassembling dismantled limbs. This dark magic makes them stronger than they were in life. Other than that, skeletons really have no supernatural abilities other than what gives it mobility. Generally, they're limited to whatever physical weapons they can find. They are similar to zombies, other than they are risen by magic, not a contagion. They are also smarter than zombies. If a skeleton encounters a locked door, the skeleton will try the handle, go through the window, climb the wall. Whereas a zombie is just going to bash its limbs and its head against the door in futility. Also, skeletons don't require air, food, drink, sleep, any of that. So, how do you protect yourself? Well, skeletons are clumsy and slow. You should be able to outrun them. Also, if you are able to manage to break enough of their bones or sever enough of their joints, the skeleton will be unable to function. Alternatively, you can try and break the binding spell that raised them from the dead initially.
And our final set of monsters, zombies. So what are zombies? Like skeletons, they're dead human bodies that have been reanimated by magical or viral means. Sometimes this reanimation is intentional. Sometimes the dead rise as an effect of a powerful necromantic magic, which is performed in an area. As I mentioned before, it could be a result of the plague or a virus that targets the brain. Generally, they're slower and weaker than skeletons. They're a little less decayed than our skeleton counterparts because, let's face it, it's a corpse, so they still retain their muscle tissue and skin tissue. So what can a zombie do? If it bites you, you can get cursed and turn into one of them. And they're not that bright. They don't have a lot of reasoning skills. You can usually defeat them just by placing yourself between a locked door and them or a wall. They tend to take the most direct route to a foe, and they're unable to comprehend obstacles. Just think Walking Dead, just roving bands of flesh that just sniff blood and go after you. So how do you protect yourself? Like the movie Zombieland taught us, rule number 1, cardio. Rule number 2, double tap. 2 shots to the head. According to myth, you have to destroy the brain or sever the brainstem in order to kill him.
Well, hopefully that will help all of our listeners out there stay safe during this Halloween season.
Yeah, the more you know. Oh, and just to let you know, this season, you might encounter little kids dressed as these things. That does not give you permission to use any of the protections against these little kids. You can usually placate them by handing out candy.
Please don't double tap any children this Halloween, even if they're egging your house.
Yeah, probably not the best idea.
For the mindfulness moment, again, like I mentioned in an earlier episode, it is difficult to find inspirational passages that have to deal with, monsters and undead denizens of the deep. So this quote ties in with the episode in the sense that it is currently fall in the Northern Hemisphere. And I was out in my backyard with my dog earlier today. And in my backyard, I have two huge birch trees. These trees are probably, 20 years old, 25 years old, easily, 50, 60 feet tall. And just in the last day or so, it has finally been cold enough consistently that the leaves on them have turned just the most beautiful shade of deep amber gold. And it brought to mind a couple of quotes. The first one is actually from Anne of Green Gables. And the quote is, "I'm so glad I live in a world where there are Octobers." The second quote is from a French philosopher named Albert Camus. And he said, "Autumn is a second spring where every leaf is a flower." And those, like I said, I was outside looking at the leaves changing, feeling the cool, crisp air. And it just came to mind how much I really love this season. Like, a lot of people like summer because of the long days and fun activities you can have with friends and family. Other people really like the spring when everything's blooming and coming to life. But my favorite season has always been the fall. Maybe it's because I grew up hunting, but I think it's more than that. I just really love seeing everything change, seeing the colors of the leaves change, feeling the air get colder. It's also harvest season, so I've always had a vegetable garden, and I love being able to see the literal fruits of my labors. So it was just nice to be out there and enjoy nature for a little bit and just have a moment to think about everything that we've accomplished over the year and how it all kind of comes to a head this time of year.
I don't have anything really to add. Both those quotes were amazing. Anne of Green Gables is one of my favorite books. I love her childhood innocence, and I completely agree. I'm so glad I live in a place that has October.
That about wraps it up for this classic Halloween monster show. Join us next week as we take a look at the pagan origins of Halloween, going all the way back to the Norse VFTWT and how that inspired the Celtic festival of Samhain. We'll also take a look at the origins of some of the modern traditions like trick-or-treating, masks, and carving pumpkins. See you then.
Do you have a request for a subject that you'd like us to talk about on a future episode? Or is there a particular topic for which you have a passion and you'd like to come on the show as a guest? Either way, send an email to podcast@viewsfromtheworldtree.com or message us through one of our social media accounts, the links to which can be found on our new website, viewsfromtheworldtree.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Also, if you have a moment, we would appreciate it if you could leave us a rating on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. It makes a huge difference, especially for new podcasts.